When we talk about climate change, there's one challenge that looms over almost everything else. How do we keep feeding a growing planet when our food systems are under attack? We're throwing billions of dollars at solutions, but what if the very way we're searching for those solutions is flawed? That's what we're digging into today.
And that really is the question, isn't it? Are we solving the right problems? Because if we get this wrong, the stakes are just enormous. This isn't just about budgets. It's about food security. It's about people's livelihoods and, honestly, the stability of entire regions. So let's unpack some incredible research that might just flip the script on how we tackle this. So let's just be real for a second about what's at stake here. Our food systems globally are already stretched thin. We've got these deep, long-standing production challenges, and climate change is basically pouring gasoline on the fire, pushing everything towards a breaking point.
And the pressure? It's just getting more and more intense. I mean, take Africa, for example. Food demand there is on track to more than double by 2050. Now think about that. This is happening at the very same time that climate change is threatening to hammer crop yields. It's a classic perfect storm scenario. Demand is soaring while supply is at risk.
Now, this slide is what's so wild. It shows this massive gap. Even before you really factor in all the future climate stuff, many farming systems in Africa are only hitting about 10 to 30% of what they could be producing. So we're already starting way behind with this huge productivity gap we have to close. And every season, climate change just makes that gap a little bit wider.
Okay, so this brings us to the big question. With the clock ticking and everything on the line, how are we deciding where to put our energy and our money? You'd hope the approach is super rigorous, based on solid data. But as we're about to see, the reality is often a lot messier. For a long time, planning has been, a bit of a mess. Decisions often get made based on bits and pieces of evidence from different studies, or on old assumptions that just never get questioned. Or worse, on a compelling story about one successful project that probably won't work anywhere else. And what do you get? You get investments that don't line up with the real needs, and policies that are totally disconnected from the reality on the ground.
This quote from the research just hits the nail on the head. When everyone's using a different ruler to measure the problem, you can't piece the results together. It becomes pretty much impossible to see the big picture and give policymakers the clear, actionable advice they're desperate for.
So, to cut through all that chaos, a totally new way of thinking was needed, something that could bring some order to this whole process, an approach that's structured, totally transparent, and this is key, built with the people who know these systems inside and out.
And that approach has a name, PAiCE. It stands for Prioritizing Agronomy in Changing Environments. The best way to think of it is as a decision support toolkit. It's designed to methodically figure out what the biggest roadblocks are, and then prioritize the climate solutions that will give you the most bang for your buck, all by combining hard data with expert local knowledge.
The real magic here is in its structured 5-step process. This isn't about guesswork, it's a logical path. First, you characterize the system. Really understand the local context, everything from the soil to the markets. Then, you quantify constraints, using data to find the actual bottlenecks. From there, experts shortlist potential adaptations. But then, and this is so important, those options are rigorously evaluated to see what's actually likely to work. And finally, the process maps uncertainties, so we know exactly where we need to learn more.
And listen, this isn't just some idea in a lab. PAiCE has been seriously road-tested. We're talking 26 workshops held across 19 different countries in Asia and Africa. They brought together almost 500 experts from every corner of the sector. Research, government, NGOs, you name it. This was a massive global effort.
So, after all that work, what did they learn? Well, the first key finding is a real game changer because it goes against a very common assumption about how we solve big problems. The number one lesson, loud and clear, from every single region, there is no silver bullet, no universal solution. What works wonders in one village might be totally useless just a few hundred kilometers down the road. Every single strategy has to be tailored to its specific, unique, local context. And this slide gives you a perfect picture of what that means on the ground. Just look at Ghana and Nigeria. They're neighbors in West Africa, right? Well, the PAiCE analysis showed that the top priority for Ghana was something called residue retention, which helps the soil. But for Nigeria, it was all about integrated pest management. The core problems were just completely different, so the solutions had to be too. But, the fact that solutions need to be local wasn't even the most shocking discovery. The research uncovered this incredible gap, a gap between what the experts thought was going on and what the data was screaming. And this is where it gets really wild.
Okay, so before each workshop, the researchers asked all these experts. We're talking people with decades of experience, the best of the best. A simple question. What do you think is the single biggest climate challenge you're facing here? So, how accurate do you think their gut feelings were?
The answer is just 6%. I'm not kidding. That means 94% of the time, the initial perceptions of even the most seasoned experts did not line up with what the structured, data-driven process revealed as the top priority. Just let that sink in for a second.
And you can see that disconnect right here on this chart. The bars showing expert perception are all over the place. Opinions are scattered across a dozen different issues. But then look at the PAiCE analysis. It's crystal clear, one or two dominant priorities that cut right through all that noise.
Now, hold on. This isn't about pointing fingers at the experts. As the researchers say right here, it's about the power of the process. It just goes to show that for any of us, no matter how much we know, our assumptions and biases can get in the way. You need a structured, evidence-based process to see past them.
And that really gets us to the heart of it. The biggest value of a tool like PAiCE isn't that it just spits out the right answer. Its real power is in how it completely changes the conversation and gets everyone thinking in a more rigorous and collaborative way.
And you don't have to take my word for it. Just look at the feedback from the experts who went through this. A full 100% said the process improved collaboration, and 91% said it brought some much-needed clarity. So it's not just finding solutions, it's building the human capacity to actually implement them.
So when you put it all together, what does a process like this really do? It forces us to challenge our old assumptions. It brings our hidden biases out into the light. It actually builds up the analytical skills of everyone in the room. And maybe most importantly, it builds a bridge over that huge canyon between knowing there's a problem and taking smart, effective action. And all of this leaves us with one last really big question to chew on. If a structured, data-driven process can so clearly show us our blind spots on an issue as vital as feeding the planet, where else are we flying blind? What other huge challenges could we solve, not with more money, but just by changing the way we think?